Page 165. As we know, Marty's plan is to dress up as an alien and scare George. But the book takes us inside George's head before that happens, which means, yes, more George backstory and also some Gipe weirdness. So, George has gone to bed early,
yielding to an overall mood of depression generated by events in school, and father's lack of enthusiasm for a college career.
I really do love that this sentence was written by a robot who has observed emotions in others and logically deduced the source of their generation. But then the rest of the page is spent on this crazy aside.
Although the phrase positive thinking was not popular as such in 1955, George had read books that promoted a variation of the same philosophy. A year earlier, he had pinned his hopes on the pre-war bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People, had memorized whole sections of it and tried to carve out a new life based on this sunny side-up attitude.
Hey, who wants to know more about this book and its author? I know I do.
According to Dale Carnegie, the book's author, a man cannot remain hostile to you if you show him you're sincerely interested in him.
Gipe must have really wanted us to know who wrote the book, because it's not like Carnegie comes up again here, and he could have just said according to the book. There's really no reason for any of this name dropping by the characters, but who cares? This is just an extension of Gipe's brand name obsession, extended now to people, and it's perfect. But did this work out well for George?
Biff Tannen had not only remained hostile, he had rubbed a hero sandwich in George's face after George spent nearly a quarter hour testing his new philosophy on him.
When I first read this, I read it as rubbed a hero sandwich in George's face for nearly a quarter hour, which would have been amazing, so let's pretend that's what was actually written, because whatever, I'm putting it in my fan fiction anyway. Pages 166 to 169. On these pages we learn that George also didn't have much luck with girls while trying to win friends and influence people, and even his parents thought he was creepy while
under the sway of Mr. Carnegie.
So George gave up and said,
"The hell with it. Let those who like me for who I am."
Hell yeah, George. I agree with you. Then we're back in the story present as George finally falls asleep. He's woken up by Marty, in his radiation suit, blasting Van Halen into his ears. How would you describe Van Halen's music? Wait, don't bother, because you'll never top this next passage, where Gipe stands up and lets Werner Herzog take over the narration.
It was the worst noise he had ever heard, the torturing of humans, perhaps, mixed with background sounds from hell. Yet it had a terrifying throb that elevated it from the realm of noise to semi-intelligent creation. But it was the creation of mad people, the synchronized babble of idiots screaming, lemming-like, at the top of their lungs. What was going on? Had he died and was now approaching the gates of hell?
So in the movie version, Marty says,
"My name is Darth Vader. I am an extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan."
But in Booktopia, Marty goes on and tells George,
"You are having a close encounter of the third kind. You have taken one step beyond the outer limits of the Twilight Zone. I'm receiving a transmission from the Battlestar Galactica. The Supreme Klingon hereby commands you take the female Earth person called Baines, Lorraine. You must not protest our decisions or you will be made to hear the brain-paralyzing sound all the time. It will melt your brain.
And finally,
we will give you the necessary confidence because our power will be behind you, to guide you."
And then Marty chloroforms George unconscious and goes to meet Doc outside, who can't remember if chloroform gets stronger or weaker the older it gets. Tee-hee-hee. Pages 170 to 171. Back in the car parked outside George's house, Doc warns Marty that George could think it's all a dream, introducing a plot thread that maybe this won't work after all.
"My knowledge of human psychology tells me that with George McFly it will be touch and go all the way," Doc said. Marty sighed. Nearly 12 hours later, he was still sighing, and alternately cursing George.
Amazing. I love how it suggests Marty sighed non-stop for a full half day, taking breaks only for cusses. Emotions can be so deep. Marty is sighing because turns out he never got a copy of George's schedule, so he spent the whole morning at school trying to find him in classes before realizing he's not there. Then he spent the whole afternoon sitting around hoping he'd show up. Then finally the school day is over and classes are dismissed and George is running to class super late and meets Marty only now. This is where the movie brings us to, skipping over all this sitting around action. I guess that's why they call it effective filmmaking. George tells Marty that he overslept and Marty realizes he almost killed his dad with that chloroform, and this realization sends
a shiver of terror racing through his system.
Which, you know, is fair. You did almost kill your dad while trying to prank him, Martin. George is all I had some strange dreams that were fantastic stuff and oh no maybe he thinks it was all a dream. Even the narrator tells us this is bad news.
It would not do to have George dismiss the careful scenario he had executed as fantastic stuff, of course.
Of course. So Marty lies and asks George if he saw the flying saucer that hovered above his house last night, and that the dozen kids in class who saw it were talking about it today. They all agreed it was in your neighborhood, George. And this puts a glint of energy into George's eyes and he asks Marty for help asking Lorraine out. Finally. Progress. And that maybe this won't work plot thread introduced at the start of this write-up has now been concluded, and what a wild, pointless ride it's been. I've always thought that George McFly seriously thought aliens wanted him to mac on a lady element of the movie was a little goofy, especially since he'd recognize those franchises down the road. Oh hey, it's Darth Vader again, didn't he visit me 15 years ago? But adding flying saucers on top of that is not a good choice, I think. It elevates the goofiness, makes what George believes even more implausible, and reduces him more to a clown. We want to like George and empathize with him, but the more you show him as being stupid the harder that's going to be. George and Marty head towards the local teen hangout and we are going to see some George Lorraine action tomorrow. Go ahead, go get yourself a glass of milk. Chocolate.